Hey everybody, Jason Burmis here, and we've got some new developments in the Epstein case, although none of them should be a huge surprise. Now, if you're looking behind me, you see Epstein pill payroll. That's just part of this story. That's just one of the payrolls we're going to talk about, but I want to open with that because that's not an isolated incident with high-level predators. So what am I talking about? Well, in this case, amongst other things, the young girls that would be groomed, they would be taken care of. Now, on top of being taken care of beauty-wise and sent to the dentist, et cetera, those type of things, well, they'd be sent to the doctor and they'd be pilled up. Pilled up. So these girls, these teenage girls, would be prescribed drugs that would then medicate them along the way. I'm sure they were being plied with other types of drugs and alcohol as well. These are common tools. And before we get to that article, I want to point out that in an open secret, Bryan Singer and his little pack of devils, when they had literally an estate with cameras surrounding it, and they had young teenage boys there. There's a video from inside where they have just prescription after prescription after prescription of pills in bags locked up in different places throughout the house because they were plying them with prescription drugs as well. And later on, I'm going to do an entire story about how one of the manufacturers of Prozac actually paid out millions of dollars to ensure that in a mass shooting case, the blame was not put on those antidepressants. We're not really going to be talking about that here, but it needs to be talked about that in the Epstein case, he medicated his sex slave. This is coming from Virginia Roberts, and you can see the whole thing in the Miami Herald here, but I'll give the Post credit, especially in this case, in the next article we're going to go over in the Epstein case. They've got the meat and potatoes, okay? There were doctors and psychiatrists and gynecologist visits, okay? So let me say that again. Doctors and psychiatrists were seeing these girls that were being curated not only by Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and Leslie Groff and Sarah Palin and Nadia Marcinkova. None of those people are in jail. But these are more accomplices. Think about this. Okay? Now, Sarah Ransom, who was 22 when she was trafficked by Epstein, see, she's suing. She was one of the more of-age girls. A lot of people don't understand that sometimes you may not be able to compromise somebody in a manner of using underage, but you can certainly compromise them if they're married, have a family, maybe married with a mistress. Maybe the mistress isn't going to be so keen on them using 22-year-old prostitutes, okay? Think about that. She says she was prescribed lithium when she was on the verge of a mental breakdown. Lithium. Remember that old series Deadwood? Remember that? Great series. They just did a movie on it. But one of the things, that was pretty pronounced in that first season is using lithium to basically create human zombies. Like, that's what was prescribed at them. They're getting lithium. Now, if you don't think that the doctors and the psychiatrists that are in on this are doing this to multiple girls and don't know what they're doing, you would be remiss. So now, we also have this ex-Palm Beach top cop. And by the way, you can see Michael Reitner's full interview right here. And this is a really in-depth article. Goes into his meetings with Acosta and how he felt like he thought something was going to be done. On every level, it failed. And again, the Post kind of gets down to it. We're going to read this, where he suggests that there was probably a mole within the Palm Beach department. And we know that there's now a couple of different investigations going on into how the Palm Beach department handled the case, but also how it handled Jeffrey Epstein after he was convicted. And we now have more evidence that Nadia Marcinkova, this girl that he bragged to other victims he had bought in Yugoslavia as a young sex slave, was visiting him up to 90 times. Oh. And it looks like Miss Marcinkova was 16 or 17 years old at the time. Is this shocking anybody? Jeffrey Epstein knew so much about the Palm Beach Police Department as it investigated him back in 2005 that he may have had someone inside tipping him off. You think a billionaire might be able to do that? The former police chief said Friday in his first in-depth interview. Remember, that's NBC. We're going to go to that in a moment on the way out. The notorious pedophile multimillionaire had somehow received advance warning of a search warrant. The ex-police chief Michael Reitner told Dateline NBC. The police had been cleared up, or the place had been cleaned up, Reitner recalled. Nothing that a computer that would have stored all of his Palm Beach mansion video surveillance had vanished. Oh, so again, acknowledging all that video surveillance and how he must have had somebody on the inside before that initial raid. And all the wires were left hanging there. A half year into the investigation, Epstein appeared to know about details of the probe that had never been made public, he said. And remember, Dershowitz is part of that legal representation deal that cut that sweetheart deal that Vicky Ward alleges was because he was intelligence. We believe the content of our probable cause affidavit ended up with the defense attorneys because minute details nobody else knew that was in those documents were being refuted, he said. So, again, Guffrey, she's big time in there. You can go check it out. The in-depth article right here. I mean, again, big article, all right? Definitely check it out. And then, Nadia Marcinkova, as we stated before. Now, Nadia Marcinkova, born in 1985, or maybe 86. They're not really sure because, again, it's alleged he bought her. He bought her. This is what people in his position do. They buy people. And they do awful and unbelievable things to children. When I say people, these are kids when this is happening. Marcinkova would have been 16 or at most 17 at the time per PBSO records, meaning she too was raped and sexually assaulted by Epstein. Of course she was. Of course she was. And she was well groomed into it to then become a procurer and part of many of these other girls' nightmarish experiences. This is the reality of the situation, all right? And that's Marcinkova right there. And I always said this, people kind of scoffed when I was talking about this well before the Epstein arrest, and I was talking about that sweetheart deal, and everybody, well, the 15 months and work release. I go, do we even know he was really checking in? I mean, how often was he there? I mean, we found out a lot of those records were falsified or inconsistent. And now we're finding out that many of these, we had the one private investigator come out and say, listen, I saw girls going in there all the time. And all these cops were on their payroll to escort him as he was supposedly in jail. Give me a break. And now there's more propaganda coming out there that there was some kind of a falling out with Epstein after the publication in 2011 of these photographs. And maybe that's there, but it's remiss. Once again, we have them on tape together as far as 2010. We know he's a creep. We know he's been accused by Roberts and others for years now of also being a pederast, right? And what no one's talking about is that Andrew is the main arms dealer for the United Kingdom, cutting those deals with Saudi Arabia. And with, again, Vicky Ward saying in public that Epstein was working with Adnan Khashoggi, and Khashoggi, through the Panama Papers, was connected to all these shell companies and intelligence, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And he is the arms dealer in Iran-Contra, a Saudi businessman who purchases weapons from Poland and Czechoslovakia. He then runs them through Israel, the Mossad, Mark Rittner, yes, I think it's Mark Rittner. I might be is it Mark Rich? Mark Rich. Man, sorry guys. Can't get it right all the time. Human being, make mistakes. Mark Rich, he then takes those weapons from Israel, ships them down to South America into the Contras' hands, and then we ship up the cocaine and the marijuana because it was both at the time, let's be honest, a lot more cocaine into Florida and Arkansas in a couple of I'm sure there was other places. And all the money is laundered through BCCI banking. So that needs to be focused on still, and it is not. Now, somebody sent me this, and something I missed a few weeks back. Apparently, the leases, at least, of Zoro Ranch they're done. Now, I don't know whether the land has actually been seized, but I wanted to go through this news because there's a couple of these local things going on. I'm not even sure this is a good thing, because if it's seized by the federales, what have they done that's so great over at Epstein Island? That's the question.
Last week, the commissioner tried accessing the state trust lands under lease, and they denied her and her team access. Today, she says she has enough reason to terminate these leases, including some possible criminal activity.
We are officially canceling the leases with the Zoro Ranch and Cypress.
Now, let's stop that. You'd think that kind of would have made national news, right? Instead, Zoro Ranch, other than those few stories about technology and then the weird eugenics program and up to 20 women at a time being housed there and given Epstein's seed, et cetera, I haven't heard of any raids. I haven't heard of any seizures. And this woman is going to talk about how she tried to go to the ranch to gain access to see if criminal activity was going on there, and she was denied access.
2 ranching leases belonging to a company controlled by financer and convicted sex offender Jeffrey Epstein terminated.
The fact that this particular individual was able to use the state land office and state trust land to create this veil of secrecy around his private property is something that disturbs me greatly.
The state...
You see that? And remember, what's not being focused on while all this was going on with Zoro Ranch, who's the governor of New Mexico? Well, it's Bill Richardson. And now Bill Richardson, that was one of the main reveals in those 2,000 pages. We're waiting for the other 10,000 pages. But in those 2,000 pages, let me tell you, that was important. And by the way, guys, thumbs the video up, share it, get people out there. If you're new to this, please join the Burmese Brigade. We do videos like this all the time at the forefront of the Epstein case. So now she's going to tell you how not only, she just told you he was shielded by the state. They encouraged, allowed this. Not going to talk about the Bill Richardson connection. I'm going to tell you about the Bill Richardson connection. But because criminal activity was going on there, that's how she was able to eliminate the leases. She wants to go in.
Land leases were written out to the company Cypress Inc., the owner of Zoro Ranch.
I went in person to the Zoro Ranch. I wanted access to state trust land, which I was denied.
Today, New Mexico's Commissioner of Public Lands said they were looking for reasons to cancel the leases, and criminal activity would have allowed them to do that.
Well, we know criminal activity is going on. All you have to do is read the indictments by the NYPD and the federal government. Okay, they call it they call it the enterprise. Okay? And they have at least 3 employees that they're working with. I would imagine out of those 3 employees that they're working with, they've obviously been given immunity at this point or worked out some kind of deal, right? They are probably, I don't know if they're Nadia Marcinkova. That's a good question. I don't know if they're Leslie Groff, Sarah Kalin. All right? Very possible, Natalia Malashev. We don't know.
One was the obstruction of access. 2 was that there are certain representations made in the paperwork we found to be misleading. And 3rd is the Attorney General's letter that gives us that additional legal cover.
After Epstein's death last month, the New Mexico Attorney General released a letter saying that these leases may have been obtained through illegitimate means for purposes rather than ranching.
Oh, you think? Does it look like ranching is fucking going on there? Excuse my French. I mean, come on.
It's sickening. But moving forward, I think we need to do everything we can at the land office to prevent that from happening again.
It's important to note that all of these leases were given out about 25 years ago, but the last lease was renewed in 2017.
Oh.
Marissa Armas, KOAT Action.
So there you go. And I want to thank one of the viewers for sending me that. I was unaware of it. It's one of the good tips I've gotten. So thank you out there. Very much appreciated. And folks, we're doing 3 to 7 videos a day. Probably going to go do a walk and talk with my dog right after this. Karma, make sure to thumbs this video up, share it with others, and please, guys, get this stuff out there. You know, we're trying to hit 50,000, then 100,000. Obviously, I'm never going to be verified. I'd like to get the merch store incorporated with this as well, and just continue to grow, because as you guys know, I'm about what? Right and wrong. It's not about left or right. All my documentaries are free on this channel. You can go to my playlist, documentaries, Loose Change Final Cut, Fabled Enemies, Invisible Empire, A New World Order to Find, and Shade the Motion Picture, all available for free for you guys. Go check it out. And because I do everything for free, there is no Patreon, there is no Subscribe Star. $5, $10, $15 means the world to me over at the GoFundMe. I want to say thank you to you guys, and I will see you very, very soon on the flip side.